and welcome to Pour It Out, the marketing podcast for health brands who refuse to be bland. I am your host, Rachel Hawkins, and today I am joined by my guest, Maddi Parsons, for another installment in my Building the Brand series. Maddi Parsons is an accredited practicing dietitian, a credentialed eating disorder clinician, and the founder of Sweet Spot Health, a Sydney-based clinic that helps humans with disordered eating and eating disorders find their sweet spot with food. In this episode, we talk about Maddi's iconic rebrand from Maddi Parsons Nutrition to Sweet Spot Health and the impact that this decision has had on her business. She speaks about the challenges of being a young founder in the dietetic industry, the importance of being kinder to oneself in business, and also her plans to improve the accessibility of Sweet Spot Health services through the innovation of new offers. This conversation is full of insights for anyone who might be considering undertaking a rebrand this year and will undoubtedly resonate with those founders listening who are currently navigating feelings of self-doubt and burnout in their own business journey.
Thank you very much for having me on, Rachel. As I said off air, I'm a huge fan of the pod already, so it's awesome to be a guest.
You are too kind, and as you know, I am the biggest fan of you. You are, of course, an accredited practicing dietitian, a credentialed eating disorder clinician, and the founder of Sweet Spot Health. So tell me, where did your journey towards becoming a dietitian begin?
It's always so interesting because I don't know if it's just a personal thing, but I tend to be so focused on moving forward that I don't really ever stop and reflect or even think about like the origins or the past. But I guess my story started when I was a kid and like an early teen. I loved cooking. I loved baking. I just loved everything about food, like spent all of my weekends cooking, things like that. As I think it's pretty a common origin story for most people in the nutrition and dietetics field, I would say. I guess then sort of going to when I was in like my late teens, early 20s, I did struggle with disordered eating. And through some ironic plot twist, I guess, I thought enrolling in a nutrition degree at uni would help me learn to be like quote unquote healthier and learn all the things that, are aligned with, health and being healthy, so on and so forth. So ended up enrolling in nutrition and dietetics, or nutrition actually, I should say, at the University of Wollongong. Thought I'd just give it a go for a year, see how that went. Ended up loving it. I really love science and maths, and that degree was quite heavy on both of those. So ended up loving it, sticking out the whole degree. Ended up graduating as a nutritionist. Off the top of my head, the year has escaped my mind, but I'm going to say, maybe 2019? Ish, I think. And then when I did graduate as a nutritionist, I think a little bit naively, I did think I would just be welcome to all of these job opportunities and I'd have a lot of things sort of like beckoning at my doorstep, so to speak. And then, surprise, surprise, it was just nothing. It was blank. So I did struggle for that year, ended up actually taking a gap year and traveling Europe with my best friend, which was pretty cool in hindsight. And I then at that point knew that I wanted to go back and be a dietitian. So enrolled back in uni and ended up finishing my master's of nutrition and dietetics.
Wow. And you're so right. That is such a common story when I speak to those who work within the nutrition industry, whether it be nutritionist or dietitian. It's coming into the industry typically due to personal interest. Maybe it's that history of disordered eating. Maybe it's another sort of driver there. And certainly that too, the common experience of finishing university and then sort of not really knowing where to next, or maybe there being, limited opportunities. Once you did graduate as a dietitian, what did your early career look like?
So at that point, alongside my studies, I was actually still working as a nutritionist at a local gym, albeit in a very small capacity. So I sort of almost had the structure or scaffolds of a business, I should say, in place. So very early career post dietetic degree, post my master's, because I already had that scaffold in place, I just thought, you know what, I'll just give it a go for a year, try and do things on my own, see how I go. If it doesn't work, then I'll, apply for a hospital job, or apply for another private practice job or something along those lines. And because at that point as well, I did really want to specialize or go down the niche of working quite exclusively in eating disorders. I ended up contracting 1 day a week at another private practice that did that, just so I could learn the ropes, have that supervision and that mentoring, because it was quite a new space. And especially as a new dietitian, there are a lot of risks there. So yeah, I did that as well while I was still building up the business on my end too.
Wow. Okay. So how long did it take you to transition from the business as a side hustle to then working in the business full time?
Off the top of my head, I think it was between 1.5 to 2 years, if that. Maybe it was 1 year. It's a little bit of a blur, because even though it was a side hustle, like from a financial perspective, I was still investing majority of my time into it. Like, it was very much a full-time gig from the hours that I spent on it, but obviously financially I was getting that income from elsewhere, as well as a bit of security.
Which is so smart to do that. I don't think I've ever spoken to someone who didn't sort of grow their business gradually like that, because of course we need to make ends meet and ensure that there's enough demand there before you sort of transition to working in the business in a full-time capacity and getting paid for it. Did you always sort of plan to start your own business, or was it more just a natural sort of progression, I suppose, of what you were already doing?
Very much a natural progression. So even reflecting on this, it actually initially started as I wanted to be a sports dietitian. So I interned for a professional sporting team during my degree, and I was really hell bent on doing that. And then at some point along the timeline, that then transitioned into corporate dietetics. So going to big organizations and workplaces and doing workshops and talks and what have you. And then that then at some point, again, I'm not quite sure on the timeline, transition to doing like the whole outpatient private practice. I think as well, I do love the entrepreneur business side of it. I love all the marketing. I love sort of learning all of that, even though I more often than not feel completely out of my depth. So yeah, I think that definitely helped me realize that that's the space that I wanted to be in.
Okay, sorry, I know that I'm sort of probing into this like a beginning of your career. I'm just so fascinated, because I feel like this is something that we so often don't hear founders talking about. And it sounds like you had so much variety in terms of the work that you were doing before
Yes.
you eventually founded what is now Sweet Spot Health. Tell me, how big of a role did building your personal brand play in the early stages of your career? Because when I first connected with you online, I knew you as Maddi Parsons dietitian on Instagram.
Yeah, honestly, creating a personal brand and having quite a strong online presence as a personal brand was imperative to my, revenue and the business and the success. I had definitely noticed a difference at the start of me being a little bit more online, perhaps not showing my face as much, more so doing, I guess, the graphic style posts and things like that, as opposed to when I was, speaking in front of the camera more, showing my face more, running in person and online workshops that were, behind or marketed as, my name and things like that. Yeah, a massive difference. I think being a personal brand, or having a personal brand, I should say, is so imperative.
I think for those who don't know, we connected online through Instagram,
Yes.
as I say, and you reached out to me at a stage where you wanted to essentially rebrand from Maddi Parsons Nutrition to Sweet Spot Health.
Yes.
We're at the beginning of 2025 right now as we're recording, as we spoke about off mic. This is a time of the year where often business owners have goals for their year ahead and what changes they want to see, and perhaps rebranding is a part of that plan. So I think there's a really interesting conversation to have on this topic. Can I ask, why did you initially decide to rebrand from Maddi Parsons Nutrition, which was your personal brand, which sounds to have served you quite well in the early, years of your career, to Sweet Spot Health?
Decided to slide into your DMs, to reach out on Instagram, because I knew I wanted to rebrand away from a personal brand. And I don't mean to contradict everything that I just said, because having a personal brand is still very much a part of my business model and still very important. But I knew I wanted to rebrand just solely away from myself as the dietitian under the business to Sweet Spot Health, because I wanted to have a team. I wanted to expand out. And as I said, I love doing the business side of things. I wanted to have more time to be able to do that and see less clients. And therefore, moving away from just my name to more of a, I guess, under a team. So under, what came to be Sweet Spot Health seemed to me at that point in time like the way to go.
And like me personally, I'm like, oh my God, rebranding is no small task for those listening. How did you feel about making that change? Were you excited about it, or was it something that was a little bit overwhelming and daunting for you?
Felt all of the feels. I felt all of the emotions. I think at the core, I was really, really extremely nervous, but I did wholeheartedly at the same time trust the decision to outsource that rebrand to yourself, and just to someone that I knew and liked and trusted, because I had been following you for a while. We had been sort of chatting, or I'd reached out for a few things over the years at that point in time. So I kind of knew you in an online capacity, I should say. And I trusted you, and I saw what you had done with similar brands. So while yes, I was extremely nervous, I still backed the decision to do it. And that really helped in those moments of, what the heck am I doing? Is this the right decision?
I don't think I've ever told you this, but you, as you say, you had been in my online community for quite some time. You were a name that I, would always sort of see pop up here and there. And I was overseas at the time I received your inquiry, so technically not working. And I remember Michael and I were doing a Sail Croatia. And I was like, oh my God, I've just gotten this query from Maddi. And I was so excited, because I think one of, I suppose, the advantages of having like an online presence is I would sort of see these names in these, what I would talk to my friends about as being these like newcomers or up and coming sort of names within different industries. And you were certainly someone that I identified within the dietetic industry as someone who I was like, this girl is going to be successful, like at whatever she does. And so when I saw your inquiry come through, I was so excited. I'm like, I have to work with her. And I remember doing up the proposal, and I had the dodgiest internet connection, and I was trying to record this online video. It was like a 10-minute proposal. It kept cutting in and out, and I did the dodgiest sort of job of like editing it all together. And I'm like, I just need to send it, even though it's a little bit, D class level, because I don't want to miss out on this opportunity. And, I'm so grateful to you to have worked with you. Let's talk about, I suppose, the rebrand and the work that went on behind the scenes, because yes, I drove, the project, but it was a really collaborative project, as you know. Let's talk about the name Sweet Spot Health. Where did it originate? Can we talk about that?
I think it was you from the top of my head. I believe it was you that brought it. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, something just clicked. I was like, yes, that's it.
I think actually from memory, it was Sweet Spot is what I proposed to you. Yeah.
It was Sweet Spot.
Yes. So I know that, one of the challenges that we sort of had was, how do we set your brand apart from other players in the industry? Because you undoubtedly work in a really saturated space. And I think anyone sort of thinking about, okay, how am I different to these hundreds of players, would be really overwhelming. And so we sort of broke that down, and we came up with the idea of talking about finding your sweet spot with food, as opposed to I help you develop a healthier relationship with food. And the name Sweet Spot initially is what I proposed to you. And you came back to me and you said, actually, no, I like Sweet Spot Health. So it was you that drove
you
the
have
health.
a better memory than I. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. It was collaborative. I believe from memory, the health part, or me wanting to include the health element, was because down the line, I think it would be really cool to perhaps like expand our service offerings and the professionals that work under the Sweet Spot Health brand. So yeah, I think that was why. But yeah, I'm really glad that it stuck.
Me too. And, undoubtedly Sweet Spot Health has such cut through. In addition to the name, how else did we ensure that your brand really stood out from your competitors? Let's talk about that.
Visually, I love this question. Visually, the colors and the bright coloring definitely stood out from competitors. And I also think still stands out as well, like looking sort of at what is out there, particularly in like the non-diet or ED space. So yeah, the really bright coloring from a visual perspective for sure, and like the bold typefaces. From the messaging perspective, I think you really wanted to harness, which I love, and I think it's been like the best decision ever. I do have quite a dry and sarcastic sense of humor. So really harnessing like that frankness and that familiarity. I can never say that word.
Me neither. It's hard.
And just it's so hard. And just moving away from such a traditionally conservative and clinical space. So really just, humanizing it, I guess, if you will.
Absolutely. And I think, when we looked at who your target audience was, we identified two different groups. So it was those who, I suppose, fit into the disordered eating category and those who have clinically diagnosed eating disorders. And when, we were doing the competitor research, some really common themes stood out. And it was that those who were sort of targeting disordered eating clientele, they tended to be younger practitioners with strong personal brands, quite pink, quite feminine, used a lot of quite soft language, as you say. Yeah. So it was, heal your relationship with food, nourish your body, find peace with food freedom, etc. Yeah. That's exactly right. And then those businesses that supported the clinically diagnosed eating disorder tend to be more traditional brands, more experienced clinicians, but business brands as opposed to the personal brand. So we really wanted to position you smack bang in the middle of that market. We wanted you to be someone who appealed to those two different target audiences as a business brand, but was much more human. And I think that's what the more traditional clinical brands really lack. They lack that human element. And you're exactly right. Incorporating your own tone of voice in there, that frankness, that playfulness, it's something that no one else had done in this space. And then, as you say, coupled with your really bold, bright, vibrant visual brand, it just had such cut through.
Yeah. No, it's been amazing.
A younger dietitian, a younger founder, respectfully, how did you feel about essentially competing and positioning your brand against those who were more established in your industry?
This is a really good question. And to be completely honest, it's still something that I'm grappling with. But at the time, I was definitely quite nervous. And I still am. I definitely feel like there is quite a lot of ageism does exist in professional industries, and I don't think dietetics is any exception. So what I guess I've found that people might, and whether or not this is my interpretation, right? But I have, from my experience, I guess I felt like people look down on me because I am quite young and I am, doing what I'm doing. I guess sort of doubting my capabilities from a business point of view, but also from a clinical, like, as a dietitian as well, like not having, so many years under my belt in the clinical world and that sort of stuff. I didn't really articulate that right, but I hope that makes sense.
I think you articulated yourself perfectly, and that's going to be something that a lot of listeners will resonate with. And I say that because I have this conversation so often with people in many different industries. It's that real imposter syndrome, right? And I think there's almost two separate conversations here. It's that doubt around your own clinical abilities versus, you as a founder and a business owner. And I think that sort of, it is very much interwoven, rather. It's like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. And I think you are evidence of someone who you always take action regardless of, those feelings that you may have. And, look at the brand power that you have built in Sweet Spot Health from doing so. Perhaps it would be interesting to talk about the communication of your rebrand. What strategies did you sort of adopt or use to communicate your rebrand to your audience?
Yeah, this is a really good one. And obviously when we were working together through the spritz, that was something that was a really big part of, okay, now that we've got the rebrand and what it looks like, how are we actually going to roll it out effectively rather than just like plopping it onto the face of the internet, only for crickets to sort of happen. So we did, or you did, I should say, we collaboratively came up with this launch period. So from the top of my head, it was all about content and marketing and a plan around that. And the two main platforms that we did a majority of that on was Instagram and email marketing. So there was a bit of a plan, obviously teasing a rebrand in the works in the lead up, and the rebrand happened and putting that out into the world, which was all of the feels, but it was awesome. Like looking back, it was such an exciting time. And then post launch as well, just sending out a few bits and bobs to remind people like, hey, this is what I used to be. This is what I am now. So people aren't like, who's Sweet Spot Health? Like when did I start following them? Who are they? That sort of stuff.
For sure. And how was the launch and rebrand received?
Honestly, better than I could have ever imagined. Like I was more than I was so over the moon personally with it. But then again, putting something new into the world, you're always a little bit unsure about how people are going to take it. But it was better than I could have ever imagined. The feedback from both colleagues, like in the dietetic and in the health space, but then also obviously friends and family and clients as well. It was just across the board positive feedback. The only perhaps potential negative thing, I think a few people questioned the name, but in saying that, it would have been like 2 people out of 100. So, I stuck to my guns and I am so happy with it.
Did you ever get any feedback on the choice of, I suppose, the brand personality and the tone of voice that was used?
The only feedback from the tone of voice was from my mum. And look, she's not my ideal client. So I took everything that she said with a grain of salt. And I also know that she's got my best interests at heart. But I think she obviously knows or thinks of a dietetic brand as, what is the norm? What is the tradition? And obviously, because mine is quite polarizing to that, I think she was a little bit unsure with how it might resonate with people. But again, over time, she's come to love it.
It's so interesting. Like there's always, I've never asked you that, but I have always wondered because obviously it is so disruptive, your brand. But when we are sort of developing something new, there's always going to be people who do provide, constructive feedback that maybe would not make the same branding choices that you would make. But yeah. I think it really comes down to, you know your brand, you know what you're trying to build and really sticking to your gut, taking the feedback on board, but also following through with your vision. And again, this is, proof of what happens when you do that. Investing in brand development, investing in digital marketing, as you know, it is a long-term investment. Yes, you do get some immediate ROI there, but it is something that will continue to give back to your business in the months and years to come. We're talking 12, 18 months down the track from when you rebranded, maybe?
Yeah, I think near about 18 off the top of my head.
Yeah. So can you talk to us about how your business has changed?
Yeah, for sure. Look, as I said before, it's the best investment I've ever made. And I guess as well, like up until we had worked together or even just outsourcing sort of the rebrand side of things, I had invested in so many other programs and services that just were really costly and didn't necessarily bring the ROI that I had anticipated. So investing in something like this, it was, the best decision. The ROI has been far greater than I could have ever imagined. And as you said, it's still an ongoing thing. The shifts, I guess, with the rebrand was we're definitely attracting more of our ideal customers. We're not getting as many outliers or random inquiries. Like we're very, I think, and then I guess that sort of backs up that our messaging is really aligning with our ideal client as opposed we're, trying to be a generalist for everyone. Like we're really sort of niching into what we do and what we're passionate about, which is awesome. As well as I think people who are now inquiring are more further along that readiness to change journey. Like they're maybe not as pre-contemplative or contemplative. They're more in that action sort of stage of change, which is amazing. As I said earlier, like that increased brand interest or that increased feedback from people around and that overall visibility, both online, but also in our local community too. So, when people are referring to a dietitian, they know that that's what we do. We're not just a dietitian that sees, every condition under the sun.
That's a really incredible insight. And it certainly sounds like that brand recognition has consistently been building over the time, and that brand authority, as you say, being recognized as the experts
Yeah.
in what you do. I know that building a team, as you mentioned, has been really important to you. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about how the business has grown from that standpoint?
For sure. So we were lucky enough to hire two new dietitians and one new administrative assistant. I call her my admin powerhouse because she does like absolutely everything behind the scenes. And yeah, again, it's just really helped me take off wearing all of the hats in the business. Something, again, I am still grappling with and still coming to terms with, just as, a bit of a control freak by nature. But honestly, I don't know how I did what I did without them. I'm so grateful for my team. It's been the best change. Other changes off the top of my head. Last year, I was able to take 2 months off the business, which in my wildest dreams, I don't think I would have ever imagined, which was really, really cool. And, the business didn't implode when I was away. The lights were still on, things are still running, which was, yeah, it was amazing.
That's incredible. I feel like that is so many, business owners' dream to be able to step away from the business and, it to continue humming whilst they're gone. I'm super interested in, I suppose, talking more about your reflections as a founder. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've faced over the past 18 months?
Yeah. First thing that comes to mind is burnout. Still working it out, still navigating it, but definitely a whole lot better at implementing boundaries. And as I said, just acknowledging that I don't have to do all of the things, I don't have to wear all the hats. So getting way better at delegating. But that definitely has been a huge, huge challenge and still is. But I think it's getting better. And for me to, I guess, have that insight and be putting things in place this early on in my career, I know that it'll get better.
I think burnout is just, as you know, like such a common issue among healthcare practitioners. I know that your founder's lifestyle was really important to you. Can I
Yeah.
ask a little bit about, what does your ideal sort of business look like in terms of the lifestyle that it affords you?
Yeah. And when you say that, do you mean in terms of like a week to week, say?
Yeah, or those bigger overarching goals as well. Like I know travel is so important to you.
Ah, yes, yes. So more travel, more working holidays. So being able to, obviously, the luxury of being able to be a bit more online affords that, which is amazing. And as well as that, just less client facing hours is a big sort of founder's goal of mine. So reducing how many times I'm seeing clients, not just for myself, but also so I can show up better for my clients too. So not burning out, not feeling so fatigued. As well, not relying, one of our big goals at the moment, and has been for a while, but we really want to channel more into this year, is moving away more so from the face to face, sort of relying on that face to face appointments for most of our income, and looking more to the online space to generate some of our revenue.
That's fascinating. Any
Mm.
insights into what that sort of looks like for you, or is it very much a work in progress?
It's still a work in progress. We do have two core programs, or online programs, I should say, at the moment. Last year, and completely on my end, we didn't run them as many times as I would have liked, but the feedback from each and every launch has been really, really positive, and the people who have enrolled in the program or the courses and carried them out have, spoke so highly of them. So perhaps looking more into how we can run them more through the year for people, particularly from an accessibility standpoint, but also, I guess, innovating as well, because it's been a while since we've actually looked at what those what those offerings entail and the inclusions in them.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that insight with us. Reflecting on your business journey now, is there anything that you wish you had have done differently along the way?
So many things. Being kinder to myself, first and foremost, just enjoying the journey a little bit more. Not everything has to be done overnight, and that's okay. And Again, that's just a big characteristic of me, like not just in business, but in personal life as well. And like once I want something done, I want it then and there. So being a little bit more patient, particularly in business, as well as I guess outsourcing, not thinking that I have to do all of the things. So outsourcing and really prioritizing what I do want to outsource, especially at the start of a career when funds are quite limited. So doing that, I would have done that a whole lot more, or a whole lot better, I should say. And I think as well, just the final reflection would be just being a little bit more open to failure. I think being a little bit of a perfectionist at heart, I thought that every time I did something, it had to be right and it had to be a success. So just being a little bit more open to, failure is good, failure teaches us things, and it helps us keep moving forward.
Absolutely. What do they say? Fail fast, learn fast. So
Yeah.
true. But I agree. Failure is that it's the uncomfortable, right? As, the type A perfectionist, it's what we sort of like want to avoid. But,
Yeah.
it is ultimately what helps us grow. Are there any moments that you are most proud of?
Expanding our team, that was amazing. As well as, I think I would have said it to you when we first started working together, but I knew and I had envisioned what I wanted the business to look like, but I couldn't articulate it. I didn't know where the heck to start to execute it. So just the fact that that has actually come into fruition and it's been very well received and it's helped me, do all the things that I want to do in my life. Like that's freaking amazing.
That's incredible. You should be so proud of that and everything that you've achieved. I just, look at you with such admiration for you as a founder and a clinician, and I think you do such important work. So I'm really excited to see what this year has in store for you. Can you, I suppose, finish up by, sharing a little bit about what is next for, you personally, and then, also Sweet Spot Health?
So for Sweet Spot Health this year is all about refining and improving like our processes and our systems so that our clients have the smoothest journey from start to finish with us, improving communication and all the boring back end stuff. As well as that, accessibility is a really big one. Cost of living, obviously, everyone's feeling the pinch, and we want to be able to give more support to people who might not be able to afford traditional eating disorder treatment, which is really costly. So what that looks like, we're not 100% sure as of yet, but it is a big focus for this year. And from a founder's perspective, I've got a wedding to save for this year, so it will just be saving. But, in the future, more holidays, more travel, more flexibility.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. You are amazing, as I say, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today to share a little bit more about Sweet Spot Health and your experience rebranding the business and growing the business as a founder. So thank you.
No, thank you for having me on. It's so fun to talk about, especially, almost 18 months down the track, looking back at things. It's really cool.
Absolutely. Now, for those who would like to connect with you online, where can they find you?
You can find us on our website, which is sweetspothealth.co, no M. And then on Instagram, it's Maddi Parsons dietitian, I believe, and also Sweet Spot Health.
And can we mention your podcast as well?
Of course, of course. So because I can, I've got so many ideas and I can never just do one thing at one time. I've also got a podcast that I run with my good friend Zeb. He is an osteopath. And our whole mission is just to break down the barriers to good health, one episode at a time.
Amazing. We've got a lot of allied health practitioners who listen to this podcast. So we might link that in the show notes for everyone to connect with you guys as well. You've got an amazing Facebook community where you offer free professional development every month, I believe.
We do. Not as of 2025 yet, but definitely in the future.
Sorry.
But I'll link all that. No.
That.
No, it's definitely in the works. But yes, we'll definitely link all of that for sure.
Amazing. Well, Maddi, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And for those listening, thank you. I do hope that you enjoyed this episode. Now, if you would like to support Pour It Out, there's a couple of things that you can do. Number one, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Maybe tell a friend or two about the show, and we would like to be tagged online too. Maddi's just shared her handles. You can find me, Rachel Hawkins Co, and also Pour It Out. All right, that is it from me. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next week.